Hey guys! So it's another week, so I'm going to be giving my thoughts as well as addressing a couple of the prompts for The Talented Mr. Ripley. So jumping right in, I didn't think that I would enjoy this as much as The Killer Inside Me and a couple of the other things that we've read, because in the very beginning, I was initially I'm not gonna say confused. Yeah, I was a little bit confused with the writing style. Um, but the thing that really helped me was listening to the audiobook as I was reading it, to really get that voice inside my head, as for like the author's pacing, the writing style, and like just really, really getting used to it. And obviously, the as the story and the plot progressed, and the longer the story went on, I got used to that writing style, and I was eventually very engaged when it came to those more climactic parts of the story. So my very first thing is that I thought it was interesting how Dickie kind of assumed an like a guiding parental role around Tom, kind of teaching him about the fancy, lush way of living, how things are supposed to be, how life is meant to be lived and relished and enjoyed. Um, but it's really interesting because Dickie really helps Tom open his eyes about life and really understand that this is an entirely different lifestyle than what he has been living in New York. Um, and Tom Ripley, he's kind of like a sponge, I think. He just naturally absorbs the qualities and characteristics and even like manner of speaking of a lot of the characters in the story. Um, and he does this for even Dickie's father. He does this for Marge. He does this for Dickie too. Um, because for Tom, his masculine identity and just his overall identity is very flexible and pretty uncertain. Um, it seems like absorbing and imitating all of those personality traits and just like overall self-presentation. He adopts the way that Dickie walks in one part. In chapter 10, it says Dickie walked in his slouching downhill gait that made his bony knees jut out in front of him, a gait that Tom had unconsciously adopted too. So, we see that these little things he copies, and later on it becomes a lot more natural to him. But you would think that imitating people's personalities and, their way, their manner of speaking, their views, stuff like that, would allow them to have at least a little bit more certain of an identity. I guess just identifying what traits they identify with and which ones they don't. Like they're able to pick and choose, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense. But for Tom Ripley, he just absorbs everything. Um, so in the end, he finds that instead of, the adoption of those traits and all of those mannerisms that are supposed to fill that void in his identity, they don't. They're completely void and ultimately all in vain, as he understands that he really has nothing left if he isn't, imitating and adopting all of those different traits, which I think is really interesting because it makes me think of Lou and how he would change the way that he spoke when he was around certain people in his small town to give off a manner of, um, I guess, being a little bit less intelligent and less educated, just to give off some kind of idea, and to be a little bit charismatic around certain people too. And I think that is what um, Tom does a lot here, um, which is really interesting how easy it is for Tom to like manipulate his personality, um, just to get what he wants. And I would call him a narcissist. I would say a lot of his qualities really fit into a narcissist or narcissistic personality disorder. And going off of the prompt about narcissism and his expectations of Dickie ultimately not being met, I personally don't think anyone would have been able to meet his expectations because they were so impossible, and he just wanted everyone's undivided attention. He wanted Dickie all to himself. He didn't want anyone in the way, and was willing to do absolutely anything um, in order to get that, even kill Dickie, which is kind of backwards, but oh well. Um, it's really interesting how Tom was very disgusted by Marge, and even her undergarments really disgusted him. I thought it made me feel kind of uncomfortable, the amount to which he was truly and utterly disgusted. And this is because she was in the way of his relationship with Dickie, or the relationship he hoped to have with Dickie. But ultimately, this is not really achieved. Um, let's see. Is there anything else that I would like to talk about? Obviously, when Tom discovers that Dickie isn't being as close with him as before, and he's being a lot more distant and standoffish, this is when Tom becomes a lot more desperate in his attempts to get really close with him. And we kind of see his thought process as he goes through this in chapter 12, represents his feelings toward Dickie's rejection of him. Um, yeah, so it says Tom sat opposite Dickie, staring at his hand. Um, a crazy emotion of hate, of affection, of impatience and frustration was was swelling in him. Sorry. He wanted to kill Dickie. He had failed he had failed with Dickie in every way, and obviously this is when he ultimately plots to kill him and get rid of him, and obviously assume his personality and just pretend to be Dickie to, number one, cover up the murder, and number two, be someone he personally wanted to be with. So the only way he feels that he can cope with this rejection is to assume the personality and role of someone that he assumes to be better than himself, and someone that he kind of worships in a way, which is Dickie. Um, he's absolutely obsessed with Dickie, which is very problematic, obviously. Um, I think Tom, he chooses to kill Dickie because he genuinely believes that getting rid of him and eliminating him from his life is the best thing that he can do, besides loving him, I guess. Because what he wants most from Dickie is his return affections, but when these affections aren't returned, um, Tom knows that rather than love Dickie, the best thing to do is to kill him and be him. Because if he is Dickie, then he is the best possible person in his life. He has become that person that he so idolizes. Um, yeah, and it's very interesting how Tom, just how adamant he is to assume a whole new personality, which, kind of really speaks to him being a narcissist. He's willing to do absolutely anything to get what he wants. Um, and he's definitely obsessed with Dickie throughout the whole thing, and which made it a lot more interesting to see that Tom was the one who killed Dickie. Um, but it really makes the reader question, is Tom trying to protect Dickie? Is he trying to destroy himself, or is he trying to destroy Dickie in the end because he feels that if I can't have him, then no one can, or something like that. Um, it's kind of weird to really try to wrap your mind around his personality and how it is so problematic. But that's all I have to say about The Talented Mr. Ripley. I am sure it was a little bit rambly this time, but I wanted to just get all of my thoughts out there. Um, but yeah, I look forward to seeing all of your responses and seeing what you have to say about it. And that's all I'm gonna say. So goodbye from me and my cat right there, Roxy. Bye.